23. That is the number of times the most powerful man in the world was stabbed on the morning of March 15th, 44 BC. 23 wounds delivered by 23 different blades, held by 23 different men, all of whom called themselves his friends. He saw it coming. Multiple people warned him. His own wife begged him not to leave the house that morning. He went anyway. And what happened next in a Senate chamber in Rome changed the entire course of human history forever. To understand why Caesar died, you first need to understand who Caesar actually was. Not the statue, not the Shakespeare play, not the salad. The real man. Gaius Julius Caesar, born July 12th, 100 BC, into a patrician family that had fallen on hard times. Noble blood, empty pockets, Rome's most dangerous combination. At 16, his father dies suddenly. Caesar becomes head of the family overnight, a teenager, responsible for everything. At 19, the dictator Sulla orders Caesar to divorce his wife because her family are political enemies. Caesar refuses. Sulla, a man who posted lists of enemies on walls and paid people to kill them, puts Caesar on that list. Caesar runs, hides in the hills, moves from village to village in the dark. A teenager, hunted, alone. Most people would break. Caesar takes notes. At 25, Caesar is captured by pirates in the Aegean Sea. The pirates demand 20 talents of silver ransom. Caesar laughs at them, tells them they have no idea who they are holding, demands they raise the ransom to 50 talents. The pirates, confused but pleased, agree. While waiting for the ransom, Caesar lives with the pirates for 38 days. He eats with them, jokes with them, reads them his poetry, demands they be quiet when he is sleeping, and every single day, without fail, he tells them the same thing. When I am free, I am coming back, and I am going to crucify every one of you. The pirates laugh. Every time. They think he is joking. He is not joking. The ransom is paid. Caesar is released. He immediately raises a small fleet with his own money, hunts down the pirates, finds every single one, and crucifies them. Exactly as promised. Julius Caesar at 25, already the most dangerous thing in the world, a man who means exactly what he says. Back in Rome, Caesar begins his climb, and it is a climb like nothing Rome has ever seen. He spends money he doesn't have on public games, gladiators, spectacles, feasts, buying the love of the people one coin at a time, goes so deep into debt that his creditors joke he needs to win a war just to afford breakfast. He wins the war, several of them, Quaestor, Aedile, Pontifex Maximus, Praetor, Governor of Spain, Consul. Every rung of Roman politics climbed faster than anyone before him. Every election won, every opponent outmaneuvered, every debt paid back with the spoils of conquest. Then Gaul, modern-day France, 8 years of war, 58 BC to 50 BC. Caesar takes an army into the wild north, beyond the edge of the civilized world, and in 8 years he conquers it all. 800 cities, 300 tribes, 1 million Gauls killed, 1 million more enslaved. The numbers are staggering. The wealth flowing back to Rome is staggering. The letters Caesar sends home, describing every battle in brilliant detail, make him the most famous man in the Roman world. The soldiers worship him. The people love him. The Senate, watching from Rome, begins to be afraid. 49 BC, the Senate, led by Caesar's great rival Pompey, orders Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a civilian. To cross back into Italy with an army is treason, punishable by death. Caesar stands on the north bank of a small river called the Rubicon, his army behind him, Rome ahead of him. Certain death if he goes forward as a civilian, certain death if he goes forward as a general. He thinks about it for a long time. Then he says, 3 words that survive to this day: the die is cast, and he crosses. The Senate panics and flees Rome. Pompey flees to Greece. Caesar walks into Rome without a single battle, opens the treasury himself, takes what he needs, and goes after Pompey. 4 years of civil war. Pompey defeated and murdered in Egypt. Caesar's enemies crushed one by one across 3 continents, until finally, 45 BC, Julius Caesar stands alone, the last man standing in the entire Roman world. Absolute, total, undeniable, master of everything. And here is where the story truly begins. Here is where the knife starts being sharpened. Caesar is appointed dictator perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity, dictator forever. Rome had used dictators before, temporary emergency rulers, 6 months maximum, then power returned to the Senate. Always, without exception, for 400 years, always. But forever? A dictator? Forever? That is not a dictator, that is a king. And Rome, the Rome that had expelled its last king 465 years ago, the Rome that had built its entire identity on the idea that no one man should have absolute power, Rome looked at Caesar and saw the one thing it feared above all others: a king. In the marbled halls of the Roman Senate, in the bathhouses, in the private gardens, in the quiet corners of the forum, men begin to talk, quietly, carefully, with locked doors and lowered voices. The question they ask is simple: is Julius Caesar, the man who saved Rome, about to destroy it? Next, the most dangerous man in Rome is not Caesar. It is the man Caesar trusts most. His name is Brutus, and he has just made a decision that will haunt the Western world for 2,000 years. While Caesar sleeps, Rome is awake. Not the Rome of the Forum, not the Rome of the markets and the bathhouses and the chariot races. The other Rome, the quiet Rome, the Rome of closed doors and careful whispers, and men who smile at Caesar in public and sharpen blades in private. This is where our story really begins. Not on the Senate floor, not at the Rubicon, in a room, with the lamps turned low, and a question nobody dares say out loud: how do we stop him? The conspiracy begins, as most conspiracies do, not with ideology, not with principle, not with love of Rome or fear of tyranny. It begins with a grudge. Gaius Cassius Longinus, senator, general, soldier, a man who had fought against Caesar in the Civil War, been captured, been pardoned by Caesar with a wave of his hand. And that pardon, that casual, generous, almost indifferent pardon, burns inside Cassius like a coal. Because being pardoned by Caesar means Caesar has power over you, means Caesar can give and take your life at his pleasure, means you owe him everything. Cassius would rather be Caesar's enemy than Caesar's charity case. Some men cannot bear to be forgiven by the man they hate. And then, the thing that pushes Cassius from anger to action: the Lupercalia Festival. February 15th, 44 BC, just 1 month before the Ides of March. Caesar sits on a golden throne above the crowd. Mark Antony, Caesar's closest ally, runs through the forum as part of the festival ritual, reaches Caesar, and holds up a crown, a royal crown. The crowd goes silent. Caesar pushes it away. Once, the crowd cheers. Antony offers it again. Caesar refuses again. The crowd cheers louder. A third time, Caesar refuses. The crowd erupts. Was it a genuine refusal or a performance? A test of public opinion? A way to be offered the crown publicly, so that when he accepts it later, it seems like the people's will? Nobody knows. Even then, nobody knew. But Cassius watches, and Cassius decides he has seen enough. But Cassius knows something important, something tactical, something that separates a successful conspiracy from a suicide mission. You cannot kill Julius Caesar and survive, unless the people believe you did it for Rome. Not for power, not for revenge, not for personal grievance, for Rome. And for that, you need one name, one face, one man whose reputation is so spotless, so unimpeachable, so universally respected, that when he stands over Caesar's body and says this was necessary, people will believe him. You need Marcus Junius Brutus. Brutus is, without question, the most respected man in Rome. His ancestor, Lucius Junius Brutus, was the man who expelled the last king of Rome 465 years earlier, founded the Republic itself. His name literally means defender of the Republic. It is not just his identity, it is his destiny, his inheritance, the thing Romans see when they look at him. And Caesar knows this. Caesar loves Brutus, genuinely, deeply loves him. Some ancient sources suggest Caesar may have been a father figure to Brutus, may have had a relationship with Brutus's mother Servilia so close that Romans whispered Caesar was Brutus's actual father. True or not, Caesar trusts Brutus completely, unconditionally. In a world where Caesar trusts almost nobody, he trusts Brutus. Cassius knows all of this, and he uses all of it. He approaches Brutus carefully, over weeks, not with a direct ask, never directly. He plants questions. Is Rome still free, Brutus? Is the Republic what your ancestor died to protect? What would Lucius Junius Brutus, the man who expelled the king, say if he could see Rome now? He arranges for anonymous notes to appear on Brutus's chair in the Senate, on the statue of his ancestor in the Forum, slipped under his door at night, all saying variations of the same thing. Brutus, are you sleeping? Rome needs you. Wake up. And Brutus, alone in his study, wrestles with it. We know this because his wife Portia knows something is wrong. She sees it in his face, the sleepless nights, the untouched food, the long silences. She asks him what is wrong. He says nothing. She asks again. He says nothing. So Portia, one of the most extraordinary women in Roman history, takes a knife and stabs herself in the thigh, not to die, to prove a point. She walks to Brutus bleeding and says, "I am your wife, not just your companion, your partner. If I can bear this wound in silence, I can bear your secret. Tell me." Brutus tells her everything, and Portia, bleeding, pale, completely composed, nods, binds her own wound, and says, "Then you must be certain, because there is no coming back from this." Brutus already knows there is no coming back. That is what keeps him awake at night. Not the danger, not the fear of death, the question of whether Caesar actually deserves it. Because Brutus, unlike Cassius, does not hate Caesar. Brutus loves Caesar, and that love, that genuine, complicated love, makes what he is about to do not a political act, a tragedy. Once Brutus agrees, everything moves fast. Cassius already has names: senators who resent Caesar, men who were passed over for promotions, men who lost property in the civil wars, men who believe genuinely, sincerely, that the Republic is worth dying for. The group grows to 60 men, 60 conspirators, meeting in secret, planning in silence, in a city where Caesar has informants everywhere. And here, the first miracle of the Ides of March, not one of them talks. 60 Romans, notorious throughout history for gossip, betrayal, and self-interest, keep the most dangerous secret in the world for weeks. Not one whisper, not one note intercepted, not one wife told, except Portia, and Portia never speaks. They choose the date carefully. March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March. Caesar is scheduled to address the Senate, and in 3 days, March 18th, he leaves Rome forever. He is going east to fight the Parthians, the great empire beyond Rome's eastern border, a campaign that will take years, maybe a decade. If Caesar leaves Rome, if he spends the next decade conquering the east, he returns as something beyond a dictator, beyond a king, something Rome has no word for. It has to be March 15th. It has to be the Senate. It has to be now or never. But here is what the history books skip over too quickly. The conspiracy almost collapsed 3 times before it succeeded. First, a senator named Cimber, who was not part of the plot, corners one of the conspirators at a party, grabs his arm, and whispers, "I know what you are planning." The conspirator's blood runs cold. He smiles, nods, excuses himself calmly. Cimber wanted to talk about a completely different matter. He suspected nothing. But for one terrible moment, the conspiracy nearly died of a coincidence. Second, the night before the Ides, a philosopher named Artemidorus, who has somehow learned of the plot, writes down every conspirator's name on a piece of paper, rushes to Caesar's house, presses the note into his hand personally, begging him to read it now, immediately, before it is too late. Caesar takes the note, puts it in his left hand with the other petitions he hasn't read yet, intending to read it later. He never does. The note that could have saved his life, still in his hand when he dies. Third, and most devastating, the morning of March 15th, Caesar is ready to leave for the Senate, dressed, composed, confident. His wife Calpurnia blocks the door. She had nightmares, terrible nightmares. She dreamed Caesar's statue ran with blood. She dreamed the heavens opened. She begged him, on her knees, not to go. And Caesar, for the first and only time in his life, hesitates. He sends a message to the Senate. He is unwell. The session is postponed. 60 conspirators, daggers hidden under their togas, sitting in the Senate chamber, receive the message. And for one long, terrible moment, the conspiracy dies. Then Decimus Brutus, one of the conspirators, one of Caesar's most trusted friends, does something extraordinary. He goes to Caesar's house personally, knocks on the door, is admitted immediately because Caesar trusts him completely. And standing in Caesar's hallway with a dagger under his toga, he laughs. He actually laughs. Tells Caesar the senators are waiting, that they will think Caesar is afraid if he doesn't come, that great men don't cancel because of a woman's dreams. Caesar, stung by that last part, straightens, nods, kisses Calpurnia, walks out the door. Decimus Brutus walks beside him, smiling, dagger against his ribs, leading the most powerful man in the world to his death. The streets of Rome are full this morning, people going about their ordinary lives, buying bread, arguing over prices, children running between the stalls.
Nobody knows. Nobody suspects. Nobody looks twice at the group of senators walking purposefully toward the theater of Pompey where the Senate meets today. Nobody notices the way they hold their togas slightly tighter than usual. Nobody sees what is hidden underneath. Caesar steps inside, the doors close behind him, and 60 men who called him friend rise from their seats. March 15th, 44 BC, morning, the theater of Pompey, Rome. Take a moment to appreciate the irony. The Senate is meeting today in a building named after Pompey the Great, Caesar's greatest rival, the man Caesar defeated in civil war, the man who died fleeing Caesar, stabbed on a beach in Egypt, his head cut off and presented to Caesar in a bag. Caesar wept when he saw it, genuinely wept. He had not wanted Pompey dead, he wanted Pompey defeated. There is a difference, and Caesar understood it. But today, in Pompey's building, under Pompey's statue, Julius Caesar will meet his end. History has a sense of symmetry. Caesar walks through Rome this morning like he owns it, because he does. People call out to him, reach out to touch his toga. He nods, smiles, acknowledges them with the practiced ease of a man who has been the center of attention his entire life. He is 55 years old, not young, but vital, sharp, still the most dangerous mind in any room he enters. Decimus Brutus walks beside him, talking easily, laughing at something, hand occasionally touching Caesar's arm, the casual intimacy of old friends. The dagger under his toga does not tremble. Decimus is very good at this. Caesar is not. And then, from the crowd, a figure steps forward, a soothsayer, a fortune teller named Spurina who warned Caesar weeks ago, "Beware the Ides of March." Caesar sees him, stops, and says, with the confident amusement of a man who does not believe in omens, "The Ides of March have come," meaning, "Your warning was wrong. I am still here. Nothing has happened." Spurina looks at him, does not smile, says, "Aye, Caesar, but they have not yet gone." Caesar stares at him for a moment, then walks on. Those are the last words anyone outside the Senate speaks to him. Caesar enters the Senate chamber. 60 conspirators are already seated, scattered throughout the room, not grouped together, deliberately spread out. So it looks normal, so nothing looks coordinated. The remaining senators, the innocent ones, rise as Caesar enters. Standard protocol, respect for the dictator. Caesar waves them down, takes his seat, his golden chair, his throne that isn't called a throne but is absolutely a throne. And then, before any official business begins, Tullius Cimber steps forward. He has a petition, a request for Caesar to pardon his brother from exile. This is the signal, the prearranged signal that tells 60 men, now. Caesar listens to the petition, shakes his head. Not today, not here. Cimber persists, reaches out, grabs Caesar's toga, pulls it down from his shoulder. Caesar's eyes flash. He does not like being touched. He does not like being grabbed. He is about to speak, and Casca, the conspirator standing directly behind Caesar, draws his blade and strikes. The first blow misses clean. Casca's hand is shaking. He has planned this moment for weeks, has thought about nothing else, has held this blade in the dark and told himself he was ready. He is not ready. The blade cuts Caesar's neck, shallow, not fatal, a wound that stings, that shocks, that makes Caesar's head snap back. Caesar grabs Casca's arm, grabs the blade itself, cutting his own hand, and shouts, in Latin, "Villain, what are you doing?" Casca, terrified, committed, unable to stop now, shouts to his brother, "Brother, help!" And the room erupts, not with battle cries, not with war screams, with the terrible, almost business-like sound of men who have decided something and are doing it. From every direction, senators who were sitting quietly 1 moment ago are on their feet, blades out, moving toward one man. Caesar spins, tries to rise from his chair, is pushed back down, tries to run, is surrounded, tries to fight, with his bare hands with his stylus, against 60 armed men. Julius Caesar, the greatest general of his age, alone, unarmed, in a room full of people who called him friend this morning. The doctor who later examined Caesar's body, a physician named Antistius, makes a careful record. 23 wounds. He examines each one, notes the angle, the depth, the location, and his conclusion, which survives in the historical record to this day, is extraordinary. Of the 23 wounds, only one was fatal. One, the second wound, between the first and second rib, into the chest, into the heart. Everything else, the other 22 blades, were not killing blows. They were, in the chaos, in the terror, in the desperate press of 60 men in a small space, almost accidental. Men stabbing blindly, men stabbing each other in the confusion. Men who had planned this moment for weeks, falling apart in the execution of it. 60 men with daggers, and only one of them, one, actually killed Julius Caesar. And here here is the detail that is almost unbearable. In the chaos, several of the conspirators stab each other, by accident, in the press of bodies, in the panic. Brutus himself, the man whose reputation was supposed to legitimize all of this, Brutus himself is bleeding when it is over, from a wound inflicted by a fellow conspirator who couldn't see clearly in the confusion. This is not a political execution. This is not a surgical removal of a tyrant. This is 60 terrified men in a small room, doing something none of them can quite believe they are actually doing. And then Caesar sees Brutus, coming toward him, blade in hand. There is a moment, described by multiple ancient sources, where Caesar simply stops fighting, stops trying to run, stops trying to defend himself, pulls his toga up over his face, as if he cannot see it, it is not real. As if the only wound that actually kills him is not the one between his ribs, but the sight of Brutus holding a knife. Shakespeare gives him the most famous last words in history, et tu, Brute, and you, Brutus? The ancient sources are divided. Suetonius, writing 150 years later, says Caesar said nothing, that he pulled his toga over his face and fell silent. Others say he spoke in Greek, the language of culture, of philosophy, of private emotion, kai su, teknon, you too, child. Caesar falls. At the base of Pompey's statue, his blood pooling at the feet of the man he defeated, the man whose death he wept over. 23 wounds, 1 fatal. The greatest man in the Roman world, dead on a marble floor, in a building named after his enemy. The irony is so complete, so perfectly shaped, that it almost seems designed, as if history itself has a sense of drama. And then, silence. The innocent senators, the ones who knew nothing, stare at the body of Julius Caesar on the floor, and then they run, not walk, run, screaming, knocking each other over in their desperation to get out of the room, to get away from the body, to get away from the blood, to get home, behind locked doors, before anyone can accuse them of being involved. The conspirators, blades still drawn, some bleeding, all breathing hard, are left alone, in a room, with a body, and a plan that only went as far as this moment. They had planned how to kill Caesar. They had not planned what came next. Brutus tries to speak, to address the fleeing senators, to explain, to justify, to deliver the speech he had prepared, the speech about liberty and republic and the common good of Rome. Nobody stays to listen. The chamber empties in minutes. The conspirators stand among the empty seats and the overturned furniture and the blood, and realize something with slowly dawning horror. They are alone, in a building, in a city of 1 million people, none of whom knew this was coming, none of whom were prepared, none of whom, in this first terrible hour, are cheering. News travels through Rome the way all terrible news travels, faster than possible. Within minutes, the market's empty, stalls are abandoned mid-sale, bread left on counters, coins left on tables. Within an hour, every shop in Rome is closed, every door locked, every window shuttered. The greatest city in the world, 1 million people, goes silent. Not in celebration, not in mourning, in shock. In the specific, paralyzing shock of people who believed, truly believed, that the man who ran their world could not simply be gone. 1 million people, all asking the same question behind their locked doors. What happens now? Mark Antony, Caesar's closest ally, hears the news while still in the city. His first instinct, his very first instinct, is to fight, to take his bodyguard and storm the Senate chamber, to avenge Caesar immediately, violently, now. He is talked out of it, barely, by advisors who tell him, wait, you don't know how many people are involved. You don't know who is armed. You don't know if the legions will follow the conspirators or follow you. Wait. Antony, furious, grief-stricken, calculating, waits. And while he waits, he plans. The conspirators, led by Brutus, march through Rome toward the capital, waving their daggers, shouting about liberty, shouting about the republic, shouting about freedom restored. The streets are empty.
Nobody cheers. Nobody joins them. Nobody comes out of their locked houses to celebrate the death of the tyrant. Because here is what Brutus, brilliant, principled, honorable Brutus, fundamentally misunderstood about Rome. The people did not hate Caesar. The Senate hated Caesar. The aristocrats hated Caesar. The men who lost power when Caesar took it, they hated Caesar. But the ordinary people, the million Romans behind their locked doors, the people Caesar fed and entertained and gave land to and built roads for, they loved him. And nobody told Brutus, or Brutus didn't listen, or Brutus thought love of republic would outweigh love of Caesar. It does not. It never does. Love of a man always beats love of an idea. Always. Julius Caesar lies alone on the floor of the Senate chamber for 3 hours. Nobody comes for him. The conspirators have fled to the capital. His friends have fled home. The senators have fled wherever senators flee when the world ends. 3 hours. The most powerful man in the world, alone on a marble floor for 3 hours. Until 3 of his slaves, not senators, not generals, not allies, 3 slaves,
Brutus, come with a litter, pick up his body, and carry him home. One arm falls loose from the litter as they walk, hangs down. The people who see it, watching from behind their shuttered windows, begin to weep. But here is what the conspirators do not yet know. Caesar left something behind, something more powerful than an army, more dangerous than a legion, a will and a funeral. And Mark Antony, standing at the podium above Caesar's body, about to give the speech that destroys everything the conspirators built. Next, the funeral that started a war, the will that turned a city against its liberators. And the question that haunts history to this day, was Brutus right? The conspirators made one fatal mistake. Not the killing itself, not the planning, not the execution. The mistake came after, in a negotiation, in a compromise, in a moment of misplaced generosity that Brutus would spend the rest of his life, which was not long, regretting. They allowed Mark Antony to speak at Caesar's funeral. That single decision, made in good faith, made in the spirit of reconciliation, undid everything. Every blade, every wound, every drop of blood on that marble floor, undone by one speech, by one man at one funeral. Let me show you exactly how it happened. The conspirators barricade themselves on the Capitoline Hill the night of the assassination, armed, nervous, waiting to see which way Rome falls. Below them, the city is paralyzed, banks closed, businesses shut, the Senate refuses to meet. Nobody knows who is in charge. Nobody knows if there will be more killings. Nobody knows if Caesar's veterans, hardened soldiers who worship the man, are going to march on Rome and burn it to the ground. For 2 days, Rome holds its breath. Mark Antony moves carefully, brilliantly carefully. He reaches out to Brutus, proposes a meeting, proposes peace, proposes that the Senate meet and decide Caesar's legacy, whether his laws stand, whether his appointments stand, without violence. Brutus, who wants desperately to believe this can end peacefully, agrees. The Senate meets, a compromise is reached. The conspirators are granted amnesty. Caesar's laws stand, his appointments stand, his will is to be read publicly, and Caesar is to receive a full public funeral. Cassius pulls Brutus aside, urgently, privately. Do not let Antony speak. Under no circumstances. Let him attend the funeral, fine, but do not let him speak. Brutus overrules him. It will look petty, he says. It will look afraid. We have nothing to fear from a speech. We acted for Rome. Rome knows this. Antony can say whatever he likes. The truth is on our side. Cassius stares at him, says nothing more, but his expression, if anyone is watching, says everything. Before the funeral speech, before Antony says a single word, Caesar's will is read publicly in the forum, and what it contains changes everything. Caesar leaves his gardens, his vast, beautiful private gardens along the Tiber, to the people of Rome, free, public, forever. And to every single Roman citizen, every one, Caesar leaves 300 sesterces, cash, in hand, personally, from beyond the grave. The crowd listening to the will being read, ordinary Romans, the people Brutus assumed would celebrate their liberation, go completely silent. Then someone starts crying, then someone else. Then a sound begins, low at first, building the sound of a crowd that is not celebrating. The sound of a crowd that is grieving, that is angry, that is dangerous. By the time the will finishes being read, the forum is packed. Thousands of people pushing forward, wanting to see, wanting to hear, wanting to be near the body of the man who left them his gardens and his money and his life. Brutus looks at that crowd and feels, perhaps for the first time, a small, cold uncertainty in his chest. Then Antony steps forward. Mark Antony is 39 years old, soldier, politician, survivor, a man who has spent his life watching Julius Caesar work a crowd and taking careful notes. He begins quietly, almost gently. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. The noble Brutus, honorable men. He keeps coming back to those two phrases, over and over, like a blade being sharpened one stroke at a time. The noble Brutus said this. Honorable men then did that. And each time he says it, the crowd hears something different in the words. Here's the space between noble and true. Here's the distance between honorable and good. Shakespeare understood this perfectly. The speech he writes for Antony is built on this, on the power of irony delivered without irony, on saying the opposite of what you mean so clearly that everyone hears exactly what you mean. Then Antony does something nobody expected, something so visceral, so raw, so perfectly calculated to bypass reason and go straight to the gut. He holds up Caesar's toga, the actual toga, still bloodstained, still torn from 23 blades. He points to each tier, names the man who made it. Look, in this place ran Cassius's dagger through. See what a rent the envious Casca made. Through this the well-beloved Brutus stabbed, and as he plucked his cursed steel away, mark how the blood of Caesar followed it. The crowd is not crying now. The crowd is not grieving now. The crowd is furious. Antony lowers the toga, looks at the crowd, lets the silence sit for one perfect moment, then says, "Kind souls, what weep you when you but behold our Caesar's vesture wounded? Look you here!" And he pulls back the toga to reveal Caesar's body, the actual body, the wounds visible, real, undeniable. Here is himself, marred as you see with traitors. The forum explodes, not metaphorically, not dramatically. People surge forward, screaming, tearing wood from market stalls, benches from the forum, to build a funeral pyre right there, right in the middle of Rome, on the spot where Caesar fell. Nobody planned this. Nobody organized it. 1 million people, moving as one, doing the only thing grief and rage combined know how to do: burn something. The conspirators, watching from the Capitol, see the smoke rising, and they run, not walk. Run out of Rome into the countryside, away from the city that Brutus was so certain would thank them. The mob burns the house of one conspirator, then another, then, in the specific terrible confusion of mob violence, burns the house of an innocent man named Cinna, who shares his name with one of the conspirators but is not him, not involved, never involved. They kill him anyway, in the street. When he tells them his name is Cinna, someone shouts, "Tear him for his bad verses!" And they do. This is what happens when you remove the man holding the world together without having anyone ready to replace him. The world doesn't become more free, it becomes more violent, more chaotic, more dangerous for everyone, especially the innocent. What follows the Ides of March is 13 more years of civil war. 13 years. Antony and Caesar's adopted son, the 18-year-old Octavian, hunt the conspirators across the Mediterranean. Brutus and Cassius, the two men who believed they were saving Rome, raise armies in the east. Meet Antony and Octavian at the Battle of Philippi, Greece, 42 BC. 2 battles, 2 weeks apart. Cassius, losing the first, believing the second is also lost, not waiting to find out, falls on his own sword, orders his own servant to kill him. The servant does. Brutus loses the second battle, flees into the hills, knows it is over, knows that Rome, the republic he killed for, the idea he bled for, is gone. Asks friend after friend to help him die. They all refuse. Finally, a man named Strato holds out his sword, turns away. Brutus runs onto it. His last words, recorded by Plutarch, are not about Caesar, not about the Republic, not about liberty or tyranny or the Ides of March.
He says, "By all means must we fly, not with our feet, but with our hands." Even at the end, Brutus is a philosopher first, a killer second. March 15th. 44 BC, evening. Rome is quiet again. The fires are dying down. The mob has gone home. The forum is empty except for the ashes of Caesar's pyre, still warm, and the flowers people have left. Somewhere in the countryside, Brutus is riding east, his hands clean, his conscience, he tells himself, clear. Somewhere in the city, an 18-year-old boy named Octavian is reading a letter from Caesar, telling him he is heir, telling him everything is his now, and somewhere on the floor of the theater of Pompey is still closed, still locked, still dark, a blood stain that nobody has cleaned yet. That stain remains, the ancient sources tell us, for years, long after everything else changes, long after Caesar is declared a god, long after Brutus is declared a villain, long after Rome is declared an empire. Just a stain on a marble floor in a building named after a dead man, where another dead man fell. History is full of rooms like that, rooms where something ended and nobody knew yet what would begin. If this story moved you, if you found yourself choosing sides, Brutus or Caesar, Republic or Empire, the idea or the man, then subscribe, because next week we go to 1258 AD Baghdad, the greatest city in the medieval world, the center of science, mathematics, medicine, and human knowledge. The Mongols arrive with 150,000 soldiers, and in 7 days, they destroy something that takes humanity 300 years to rebuild. You will be there, right in the middle of it. See you then.